The intelligence and deployment of the German army in Operation Barbarossa is well known, as is the fierceness and skill with which the Soviet troops resisted such an onslaught. Now, the Red Army had a secret weapon that the Germans not only underestimated, but were completely unaware of. In this video we are going to meet the fiercest and most ruthless warriors in the service of Stalin, a group of female soldiers who inspired terror and shamed the male and discriminating troops of the Third Reich. When the Nazi army set out to conquer Soviet land, it encountered an unexpected element in the enemy ranks. We are not referring to weapons, artillery, or their military deployment in terms of techniques, but to human resources. We are talking specifically about the female soldiers of the Red Army. The presence of these female troops was not only disconcerting to the German armies, they even found it offensive. There was a visceral hatred between Hitler's Germany and Stalin's Soviet Union, as the clash of ideologies of National Socialism on the one hand and communism on the other translated into almost inhuman hostility on the battlefield. German troops, spotting Soviet female soldiers among the fighting platoons at the front, were enraged, considering it a cheap shot and cowardly act on the part of the Soviets. In addition, this presence violated all the beliefs and good customs of the German people. Nazi women who helped in the war did so from the respectable place of mothers and wives. But that was just a front for National Socialism, as many were called up to work in armaments factories, as military nurses, and even in sinister concentration camps. However, taking them to the front lines was an infamy that the Nazis did not intend to tolerate. The communist regime considered that women and men were equal in everything, in rights and obligations, which is why training in the military and going to war to defend the mother country was the most logical thing in the world. The Nazis were the antithesis of this thought, so instead of being seen as women in uniform, Soviet fighters were seen as an aberration, a degeneration that was caused in women by the communist regime. For the Germans and their vision of the world, the Soviet fighters were, in the exact words of the Nazi commanders, the face of evil. While it is true that the German armies had no mercy on the Red soldiers, and even less on the Russian civilians who faced them, they were particularly cruel to Soviet women, as a matter of principles and values. They were described as degenerate, and among the National Socialist troops, there was talk of hunting them in the middle of the battlefield. The ones they did show some respect and leniency to were the Soviet nurses, because that role came to be understood and accepted by the Germans. Beyond the prejudice and discrimination that the Germans displayed, the truth was that Soviet women were a real nightmare for the army under the Führer's orders. The female soldiers of the USSR were truly reckless, and had functions as important as those of their male counterparts. In fact, in some cases women were the ones who commanded some critical situations. An example of this is that the platoon in charge of heavy weapons and anti-aircraft weapons that drove off the Nazi bombers and panzer tanks were a group of brave and seasoned fighters. The women who served during World War II defending the USSR number around 1 million soldiers, among whom there was also a large percentage of volunteers. Due to the polyvalence of their more secure functions, either as nurses and other positions in which they were out of danger, there is no exact number of casualties, but it is estimated that around 400,000 Soviet women died on the battlefront defending their homeland. Beyond the logical casualties in any war, the case of the cruelty of the German army with female Soviet troops is truly chilling. It was clear that the Germans hated what these women represented and called them disparagingly Flintenweber, which translates to something like the gunslingers, but the intention was clearly insulting. In June 1941, only 7 days after the invasion began, the German High Command began to give the order not only to shoot, but to directly exterminate the women who fought as soldiers on the Soviet lines.
Although it sounds inconceivable, the directive was, literally, to immediately execute female soldiers who are taken prisoner, as a matter of principle.
Virtually all the men in command of the German troops gave these secret and illegal orders, which ended up coming together, clearly demonstrating a fascist and discriminatory ideology emanating directly from the Third Reich. There were some more extreme Nazi generals, who even gave the indication to hang the fighters in the trees so that they would be seen and encourage the other recruits to leave the battlefront. Despite the sinister orders of the German High Command, not all Soviet women were executed immediately, but were also systematically sexually assaulted by groups of German soldiers, before being liquidated. The girls who had the fortune to be saved from being executed were around 18,000. But they did not have any better luck, since they were sent to Ravensbrück, the German concentration camp exclusively for women. Those who knew of this fate, which was not a small number, preferred to commit suicide with honor on the battlefield, rather than become prisoners and be taken to concentration camps or mercilessly sexually abused by packs of Nazi soldiers. Outside of the ideological component to which the troops of the Third Reich were subjected, the visceral hatred that German soldiers felt for these women was motivated above all because they were exceptional soldiers and were largely responsible for the defeat of the Nazi army in their adventure to conquer Soviet territory. There are some proper names of Soviet girls who are forever inscribed in the war history books, due to their exploits in World War II. More than 1,000 women fought on the main fronts as snipers, doing an extraordinary job that gave excellent results, eliminating around 12,000 enemies. The most prominent of these was Lyudmila Pavlichenko, who shot down 309 confirmed targets during the Battle of Odessa and the defense of Sevastopol, making her the most effective female sniper in all of World War II. Another outstanding sniper was Rosa Shanina, who was known for her ability to do doublets, that is, to hit two targets with two quick successive shots. She died on January 28, 1945, at the young age of 20, but having eliminated 59 enemy soldiers and officers. Of the few women who served in the tank divisions, Alexandra Samosenko stood out, who at only 21 years old reached the rank of captain and participated actively on the Bryansk and Voronezh fronts and during the Battle of Kursk. Her distinguished performance earned her the Order of the Red Star Medal for commanding T-34 armored vehicles, as well as being the only female deputy commander of a tank battalion.
Samosenko, 23, died of war wounds on March 3, 1945.
The 588 Night Bombardment Regiment, created by the famous Soviet aviator Marina Reskova, who was called Night Witches by the Nazis, was an air unit made up exclusively of women, which was in service from 1942 until the end of World War II, spreading terror among the German troops. Some Nazi soldiers came to think that these volunteer pilots, between the ages of 17 and 22, were taking some medication that made them have perfect night vision that made them infallible. In this female air combat unit, Lydia Litviak, nicknamed by the Germans as the White Rose of Stalingrad, stood out, who managed to shoot down up to 12 enemy planes alone and 4 together. She currently holds the record for the highest number of aerial kills made by a single woman and, unfortunately, she died in combat on August 1, 1943, at only 21 years old.
Zoya Kosmodemyanskaya was the first woman to be decorated as Hero of the Soviet Union during World War II, due to her sabotage work in the German rear. Unfortunately, she was captured by German officers, who tortured her, until they decided to hang her on November 29, 1941, when she was only 18 years old. Her heroic acts and sacrifice were highly valued in the USSR, where she became one of the most popular symbols of resistance against the Nazis.
If you like this video, we recommend you subscribe to the channel to continue learning more about military history.